This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
It is such a great zchus to be in the home of Rabbi and Mrs. Garber and to participate in such a great organization. Just to hear what Mr. Shimonov said and the way he said it with such sincerity should really open up our hearts, and just we should do everything possible because we have the opportunity to save a generation, and it's in our hands. And Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky used to say, before he passed away, that our generation, the nesoyan of our generation, is saving Soviet Jewry. So every single one of us, when we get to Shemayim after 120 years, one of the questions they're going to ask, what did you do at the parlor meeting by Rabbi and Mrs. Garber? Did you undertake a child to support and make sure that this child could be like your child? So I personally want to give a thanks to Rabbi and Mrs. Garber for opening up their home. And I just want to say something personal to Susie, if I may. Susie's a great writer. And just about every speech that I ever give in Queens, either Yaakov Searle is there or Susie Garber is there. Or both, right? And usually within not 24 hours, but 12 hours after my speech, I get an email with the whole speech, and I'm thinking, where did she get my notes? But she takes the notes, and we edit back and forth, and she gets the picture in, and Yaakov puts it in. It's just incredible, the diligence that you do, L'Shem Shemayim. I'm sure you do it for many, many other speakers as well. So I just want to thank you personally for all the diligence that you've done. I want to tell you a beautiful story. I have a brother, Rab Kalman, and should have a refuah shlema. Yisrael Kalman ben Hinda. He was very close. One of the things that my father, Olav Shalom, always taught us was to be close to Gedolim. And all of you know that I've had the zchus to write the Maggid books, but it all started when Rab Shalom Shvadron came to our home, and my father showed us literally what does it mean to take a gadol into your house and always to go to Gedolim and to learn from them and ask them questions. So as my brother got older, that's what he did. He associated, whether he was learning in Eretz Yisrael or wherever, he always went to Gedolim to ask them. That's what Chazal teach us, Gadol Shimusha Yosem Elamudai. It's even more important to see how a Gadol lives daily than even to learn from him. So one of the people that he got close to was Rabbi Yehuda Zev Segel, the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva. And when the Rosh Yeshiva would come to America, my brother would come and try to learn from him and speak to him. And then he went to his house. The Rosh Yeshiva's wife had already passed away, but my brother Kalman went to his house during Elul and to be Mishamish, the Talmud Chacham, to be there for part of Elul, to be there Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur. And he wrote down every little thing that Rav Segel did. Every little thing. And he would ask so many questions. And one time they were walking in the street, and my brother was asking Rav Segel questions, and Rav Segel said to him, Kalman, you're not letting me live. So my brother said, he said to Rosh Yeshiva, how did you become who you became? You did exactly what I did. You connected to Gedolim, and you asked them all the questions. He said, okay, you're right. Go ahead, ask whatever you want. So that night, my brother, I can't believe this, but as Rav Segel was about to go to sleep, he went into his room. And he saw two things. He saw that there was a pushka on the door, on the shelf. He saw Rav Segel standing before he put money into the pushka. He was saying a tefillah. And then he saw him put money. So he said, Rav Segel, I've got to ask you, Rosh Yeshiva, please. I noticed two things, that you said a tefillah and you gave tzedakah. So why did you say, what were you davening? Now, Rav Segel had told him that he could ask, right? And the truth is that when you do ask Gedolim, you do learn. So he said something very interesting. He said, you know that every day people come to me and they ask me questions. And some of them are very, very important questions. Not only life and death, but hashkafa and musar and chinuch and things like that. And I have to have a clear head. And I spend time learning during the day, and I want to have a clear head. So I daven before I go to sleep, that my sleep should be so restful that I should have a clear head tomorrow the entire day. Very interesting. How many of us wake up tired, right? But he wanted to go to sleep and ask Hashem that the sleep should be so restful that tomorrow he would have a clear head. So that was one thing. Then he said to him, and why does the Rosh Yeshiva give tzedakah at night? So listen to what he said. And he said like this. He said, we know that tzedakah tatzil mimaves. Tzedakah rescues from death. Now the Gemara tells us that when a person is asleep, that's 1/60th of death. So in a sense, a person's dying at night, and Hashem gives him back the neshama in the morning. So he said, if I am partially dead at night, I want to be sure that I wake up tomorrow morning. So I'm giving tzedakah because of tzedakah tatzal mimaves. Interesting, right? Mm-hmm. But I remember my father, Shalom, used to tell us that when you ask a gadol a question, he will give you an answer, but he's not going to tell you everything, why he does what he does. There are certain things that remain secret. And the more I thought about why he would give tzedakah at night, it occurred to me, a pasuk that all of us said tonight, at least those who davened in shul and said Yeshiva b'Seiser. There's a pasuk that we say in Kapitel Tzadik Aleph, which is Yeshiva b'Seiser, and we say Al Kapayim Yisa'uncha. Al Kapayim means on your hands, Yisa'uncha, the Malachim will carry you. And the Mefarshim ask, what does that mean? What do you mean, on your hands the Malachim are going to carry you? So the Mefarshim bring a medrash and they say, the mitzvah that you do with your hands, that's going to carry you. That's going to make sure that Hashem is going to make sure that you have a good life. And what is that mitzvah the Medrash says that you do with your hands? That's the mitzvah of tzedakah. So the Rosh Yeshiva surely realized that it's at night, and many of us who say Krishma Alamita, we say Yeshiv b'Seiser, we say that part after Shema. So we say these words, Al Kapayim Yisa'uncha, through the efforts of our hands. That's going to carry us. So if it's at night, and we just said the pasuk, and we're going to say it later before we go to sleep, so then this is a night for tzedakah. And there could be no greater tzedakah than saving an entire generation. It's heartbreaking when you think about it, that there are thousands of children. The parents don't know better. As Mr. Shimonov said, you can't blame them. You can't blame them. They didn't have the background. They didn't have the parents. They didn't have the opportunities that we had. So I want to tell you a great story. And I wish that one day we could all go together. It's not so far. We should go together to the Kivrei Tzadikim, to the graves of the Tzadikim that are along the Jackie Robinson, the Interborough. You don't have to go to Poland. You don't have to go to Lithuania. Over there you have Rav Palm is buried, and his Rebbetzin, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, and Rav Henach Leibowitz from Chavetz Chaim, the Chavetz Chaim's second wife, Rabbeinu Yaakov Yosef. So what happens is that I always tell people that, you know, that the idea right next to Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, there's a Rosh Yeshiva that maybe, I know Rabbi Septimus surely heard of him, but others may not have heard of him. His name was Rav Shlomo Hyman. Rav Shlomo Hyman was the Rosh Yeshiva in Torah Vodaas. Tragically, he had no children. He loved his Talmidim like his own children. So one of the Talmidim that he had was a man by the name of Rabbi Moshe Samuels. I remember Rabbi Moshe Samuels from Torah Vodaas. He was a Rebbe. I never had him as a Rebbe. And the reason that I didn't have him as a Rebbe, because I didn't come from Panama. You see, in Torah Vodaas in those years, there were so many kids coming from Chile and Panama and Argentina and Cuba, all these places. And the roughest and the toughest kids that really had no background, they were in Rabbi Moshe Samuel's class. But he once told a story that was amazing. He said he was a bacher in Torah Vodaas. He was maybe 18 years old. And he was in Rab Shlomo Hyman's shir. And one day there was a snowstorm in Williamsburg. And instead of 20 boys coming to the class for the shir, 4 boys showed up. So he said to all of us when he was telling the story, he said, the 4 of us thought for sure the Rebbe's not going to learn new Gemara. I mean, there's only 4 kids here. He'll probably review some Gemara from the past, but he's certainly not going to learn new Gemara. But he opened up the Gemara and he started learning new Gemara, and he was so excited that he gave the shir with such gusto. and he had to stop for a moment to take a glass of water. And one of the boys said something to him that he should have not said. He should not have said this, but he did say it. And he said, Rebbe, take it easy. There's only 4 guys here today. But listen to what the Rebbe answered. I get the chills now as I'm about to tell it to you. He said, you think I'm only talking to you? I'm talking to you and to your children and to your grandchildren. I'm talking to you and to your Talmidim and to your Talmidim's Talmidim. And Rav Moshe Samuel said he was right. Because at that time, I was only one person out of 4 in the class, but I had thousands of Talmidim over the years. So that day when he was giving a shir, he wasn't talking to 4 people, he was talking to 4,000 people. And that's what we have to know here tonight. What we are doing here in Rabbi and Mrs. Garber's home is not saving 100 kids. We're saving 100,000 kids. You know why? Because every child, like Mr. Shimonov's child, Mr. Shimonov is going to be a Zayda. And he's going to be a Zayda of a child who's learning in a Lakewood Cheder. Or maybe who's learning in Mir in Yerushalayim. So it's not only the children that we're saving, but it's their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. And there's another thing. It works in reverse also. Look at him. He looks more like a rabbi than I do, right? Okay, how did that happen? That happened because he saw his children wash negovasa. And he saw his children can't eat borscht and cream. And when he sees all these things, he knows that he and his wife, who should have a refuah shlema, have to become better Jews. And so therefore, when we're saving these children that the Garbers are saving, it's not only their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, but it's the families, it's the parents. And you go to some of these places. I can just tell you, this past summer I was in the Ukraine. I had never been to the Ukraine before. They always felt that it was dangerous for us to go, to take a trip there. But one of the places we were was in Kiev, outside Kiev. And there was a camp, a Jewish camp. That there were frum boys that were counselors. They came from Eretz Yisrael, they came from America, from England. And there were little boys, I'm telling you, you could cry. I have a video of it. These kids, 10 and 11 years old, they're singing songs that our children sing. Hamish songs, beautiful songs. Torah Tziva Lona Moshe, all the beautiful songs. And what's going to happen with these kids? These kids, eventually, they're going to go to Eretz Yisrael or going to go to America and England, and they're going to go to Yeshiva, and they're going to save their future generations. And that's the opportunity. There can be nothing greater than helping the Garbers to make sure that they have the money. And what they do is they supplement the scholarship of the schools. So, in other words, we're not asking $10,000 for one boy. When you give $10,000, which I'm sure each person is going to give tonight, there's no suffix, right? So each person, you're saving 20, 30 kids because you don't need the 10,000 just for one. That's the beauty. Because what the other Rabbanim, what Rabbi Yaniv is doing, and Rabbi Schwartz, and our speaker, Rabbi Meir, what's your last name again? Rubinov. What they're doing is they're doing the work for us. They're making sure that the schools are participating with the scholarships. So we just have to do, as he said before, the Makkah B'Patish. So tonight we've come for a holy cause. It's a holy cause because this is going to last ad bias hagoyel. And that's why we have to do Al Kapayim Yisa'uncha, perhaps to give it away. And you don't have to announce it for everybody if you want to, B'Kavod Gadol, because like this it'll inspire other people. But whatever you do, you have to do that something that we never did before. Because this is the future of Klal Yisrael. And because tonight we've come because of the future of Klal Yisrael, I decided that perhaps we would speak a little bit about chinuch, the chinuch of our own children. Because the greatest thing that we could do when we bring some of these children into our homes, and they see a happy home, and they see that Yiddishkeit is geschmack, and as Mr. Shimonov mentioned, they brings the other girls and they come in and they see until Yadayim, they'll see Zmiris, they see the beauty of a Jewish family. So we have to be role models. We have to be role models. And so I want to talk about some aspects of chinuch that I think that are just so important for each and every one of us. I remember the first time that I took a trip to Lithuania, we went to the town of Ponevezh. Now, the town of Ponevezh, today there's a big Ponevezh Yeshiva in Bnei Brak on top of the mountain. But it's named after that city. And I'll tell you the truth. When we drove from Vilna, we drove to Ponevezh, and I saw this big green sign, I still can't forget it. Ponevezh Marathon. Like, it was so strange to me. Like, Ponevezh is Torah, right? You know, Torah and Yerushalayim. What does a Ponevezh Marathon mean? But of course, Ponevezh was a city. It's a city today like any other city. And we come to the place where the yeshiva used to be. Now, the yeshiva today, unfortunately, is a bakery. And nobody in Ponevezh today knows that that was the yeshiva, except that there's a plaque. There's a plaque that's written both in Russian and in English, maybe in Hebrew, I don't remember, that this is the place where the big yeshiva used to be. And you know what's incredible? If you would see the picture, I have it in the book that we wrote afterwards, Traveling with the Maggid. The building has 12 windows, because a shul is supposed to have 12 windows. That's what it says in Halacha. And of course, one of the reasons perhaps is because Hashem accepts the tefillos of all 12 shvatim. That bakery, which is that building where the Ponevezh Rav had his yeshiva, somebody pointed out, still has 12 windows there. It's amazing. So some wise guy said, oh, of course, you know why it became a bakery? Because every yeshiva needs dough. Okay. So I didn't print that. But it was just a cute line anyway, that Susie probably would have written on the bottom or whatever, of the article. But the idea is, I told them a tremendous insight from the Ponevezh Rav. And what I try to do in each of these places is to make it huya oimer, huya oiseh. If we go to Vilna, then I would tell Divrei Torah from the Vilna Gaon. If we went to Baranovich, I told Divrei Torah from Rabbi Chana Wasserman. We went to Telz, I told of the Telz Rosh Yeshiva. So now here in Ponevezh, I told them this thing. The Ponevezh Rav asked a question. Let's think of this question, and you'll see the brilliance of his answer. He asked like this. It says in Tehillim, David HaMelech is asking Hashem, Shlach yadecha mimoraim. Hashem, send your hand from on high. Pitzeni v'hatzileni, save me, please. Mimayim rabim, from the strong waters, miyad b'nei nechar, from the Gentile nations. In other words, the strong waters are the Gentile nations. Hashem, save me from those terrible waters. So the Ponevezh Rav asked, it compares, the Pasuk in Avadia compares Jews to fire. V'haya beis Yaakov eish, ubeis Yosef lahava. Beis Yaakov was like a fire, Yosef is a flame. So the Goyim are like water, and the fire is like Jews. What happens when water and fire? The water puts out the fire, right? So is that what's going to happen at the end of time? That the water is going to put out the fire? That the Goyim are going to be superior and they're going to get rid of us? What does it mean here? This contradiction. And the Ponevezh Rav gave a fabulous answer. He says, you know when the water puts out the fire? When they touch each other. But what happens if you have a pot in the middle? You have a mechitza between the fire and the water. Oh, then the fire is stronger. If you have a pot of water and you have a fire underneath it, you keep that fire there long enough, that water is going to dissipate. So the first lesson that we have to learn is that the walls of our home and the walls of our schools have to be a mechitza to the outside world. Can I show you a mechitza to the outside world? This wall right here. You see, when you walk into this house, you just walked into the door and you walked in here, and what do you see? You see Sfarim. That's a mechitza to the outside world. Of course, the Maggid book is right there. I appreciate it. Okay? I know Susie put it there for purpose, but it's okay. I appreciate it. But the idea is, you walk in, you feel this is a Hamisha place. Look at this. Here's the Kaisel. Here's Yerushalayim. That's what our homes have to be like. I'm a big believer in sports. I'm a big believer in kids. I don't think there's anything wrong in following sports. But chas v'shalom, not to hang up Kobe Bryant on your wall. Even Aaron Judge, who's a lovely guy. Right? There's a limit. You can follow him and you could read about him, but that's not what's hanging on our walls. The walls of your home have to be a mechitza to the outside world. Today with our iPhones and today with the computers, the outside seeps in. You walk into Beis Yaakov of Queens, as I'm sure you walk into Gymnasia and all those other places. The walls are crying out, this is Yiddishkeit. This is warmth. These are Gedolim. These are Tzaddikim. That's it, Koniyisen. That's the first thing that we have to remember. We have to be so careful what we allow into our homes. And our kids are susceptible. They can do things. You're sleeping. They have these phones. Any kid over 17 who doesn't have an iPhone today. Let's be real. And it's a gezod. And if that's the case, we have such an achrayus to be careful. And every parent has to know how to balance what the kid should watch and how you're going to protect them from watching. We have to protect the children. They don't even realize the devastation that could happen because of all these things. But when you walk into a house and the parents are proud of Yiddishkeit, and you see a wall like this, that this is so prominent in the house, this is what the house is all about. That's what the point of Yeshiva is talking about. Here's the second thing that I think is so important. And that is that your home should be a happy place. If you're an Erlich Yid, and your home is a happy place, then your children most likely are going to be happy. But if there's conflict, and there's rift, and there's dissension, and there's a lack of pride of what Yiddishkeit is all about, that's going to seep through to the children. And I want to read to you something very important. What children learn from their parents' marriage. It's written by a woman, obviously a Jewish woman, Judith Siegel. Children are deeply affected by the ways of which parents demonstrate respect for each other. When parents praise or compliment each other, they send a message of value that is fully absorbed by the child. When parents demean each other, they create an atmosphere of conflict in the child. Disrespect between parents creates an imprint of marriage as an unsafe place to be. You want to know, and I know I'm on tape, and I know Torah Anytime is going to send this out tomorrow, it's going to be all over the world. But I'm telling you, when there's conflict in a home, and there's a broken home, and sometimes there has to be a divorce, I understand that. But when there's conflict in a home, the kids are kabbanis. There's nothing to talk about. These kids are broken inside because you are their icon. You are their father. You are their mother. And they look up to you and they worship you. And when there's conflict, they are broken children. Make no mistake about it. You know, many of us, and I know so many of you are such wonderful people, but many of us here, I'm talking to all of you, are so humble. And you think, oh, I'm a father, I'm a mother. My father, he was a father. My mother, she was a mother. I can tell you that when I first got married, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd see my wife there. I said, that's a mother? Are you kidding? It's a joke. We're married? This is a joke. We're parents? You don't believe that we're serious, right? But we aren't. Really, that's what parents look at. They look at us as icons. And we have a tremendous achrayus to keep an upbeat family home and to make sure that the home is a happy place. And you know what Rav Matisyahu Solomon says? And he says this especially to mothers that are teachers. Don't make your house a classroom. How many times Friday night, if the child doesn't know the Dvar Torah, the father's yelling, the mother's yelling, it's not a classroom. You know what Rav Matisyahu says? Those kids are not dropouts, they're push-outs. And that's frightening. That's frightening. We have to always try to make sure that our homes are happy places. I'll tell you, you know, all of you who know me personally know that my Rebbe is Rabbi David Cohen. So, you know, he's not a marriage therapist. You know Rabbi David, right? But he tells me that many times people come to him, and if he sees that they need professional help, so he'll send them professional help. I remember one time I came to Rabbi David, and it was many years ago, and I see that he doesn't look so good. I said, Rabbi David, is there anything wrong? He says, I'm afraid last night I paskined wrong. Now, I never heard him say that. I said, what happened? He said, there was a guy who came here last night. Him and his wife, they were having marriage problems, and the guy was so depressive. So I paskined for him that every night he has to tell his wife at least one joke. So I said, what's wrong with that psak? He said, because he's such a depressive, it probably won't be funny. I should have told him he has to say 3 jokes. At least one of them would be funny. But there's truth to that. There's truth to that. The children want to be in a warm and an embracing environment. That's very, very important. Steve Covey, if I'm allowed to quote him. Of course I'm allowed to quote him. 7 points of highly effective families. Steve Covey writes about how to live a positive life. The greatest thing you can do for your children is love your spouse. The strength of the bonding in this marriage creates a sense of security in the entire family. The quality of that relationship truly governs the quality of family life. So the first lesson tonight is make sure that your walls are a mechitza. The second lesson is make sure your home is a happy home. And then the ehrlichkeit and the frumkeit that you want to give over. The kids will want to copy you because they love you and they revere you. And when you play with them and you spend time with them, and that's the next thing that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the idea of spending time with your children. I remember I once took my children, we went to Rav Volba. Rav Shlomo Volba, who was the Pikeach Hador. And we went to him, he lived not near Hanof. Where did he live? Right, Givat Shol. So I remember I said to him, and I had my children there, I said, Rebbe, I have the opportunity to speak to parents many times about chinuch. What should I tell them? And listen to what he said. He said, you got to tell all the parents there's 2 things they have to give their children. Time and love. Time and love. Now, my son was learning in the kollel at that time, and he kind of got frightened. How much time does he have to give his kid, right? He wants to learn in the kollel. So he said to Rav Volba, how much time do I have to give my child? And Rav Volba gave the classic answer, and he said, as much as they need. You can't go out every night. There are so many organizations that need our help, but your children deserve your time and attention first. People ask me, oh, you travel all over. One day you're in Chile, then you're in Mexico, and you're in Switzerland, Eretz Yisrael, and Canada. You know why? Because my kids are married. You got to be crazy to do this kind of stuff if your kids are not married. I want to tell you something. I want to tell you something that I did, and I believe every one of you should do that. I don't care how busy you are. There's nothing more important than your children. I have 5 children, and what I did when they were growing up was that every child, once a week, had 20 to 30 minutes of undivided attention. Whatever you want to do, me and you. You want to go bowling? We'll go bowling. You want to learn Ezra? We'll learn Ezra. You want to go for a walk? You want to do exercise? You want to play basketball? Whatever it is, me and you. Only me and you. No telephones, no interruptions. You don't have to raise your hand. Think about it. When was the last time you had a real good conversation with your child? Or you ask him, what'd you get on the test? What'd you get wrong? Right? The kid gets 98. The first question the mother asks, what'd you get wrong? Why should the kid get anything right? All his mother wants to know is, wants to find out is what he got wrong. So, I'm a big believer in spending time also with grandchildren. Today, parents are so busy, and you can make a connection with your grandchild. So I have a grandson. As I told you before, I'm a big believer in sports. I said to my grandson, it was many years ago. Today he's already learning in Eretz Yisrael. At that time he was, 7 or 8. I called him up. I said, listen, Avram, when you're ready for your first baseball glove, you call me. We're going to go together for it. Okay, Zaidi, I'll call you. The next day he calls me. Zaidi, I'm ready. Okay. So I said, okay, fine. We're going to go. Now, I could have given him $20 or $25 and go buy a glove. No. I went with him to Sports Authority, by Woodhaven Boulevard. Now, when I played ball, as a kid, there was a infielder's glove, a catcher's glove, a first baseman glove. That's it, right? You come to Sports Authority, there are 10,000 gloves of every single age. How in the world are you going to pick out a glove? Infielders, outfielders, of course, righties, lefties, a tax-deductible, all kinds, every age. I didn't know what to get him. So, again, the women here will not be able to identify with what I'm talking about. But there used to be a company that made baseball gloves called Wilson. My first baseball glove was a Wilson glove, and the leather was so addictive that it had a smell. I used to smell it between pitches. I was like addicted to that leather. The leather was heavenly. So, what happens? I'm going up and down the aisle. I see Wilson, they're still making gloves. I can't believe it. I pick it up, I smell it. It's the same smell. I said, Avram, here's your glove. He said, Zaidi, how do you know? I said, smell it, you'll see. Doesn't know what I'm talking about. Okay? I would pick up the glove, I throw him a ball back and forth, he catches every one, and we go buy it. 3 weeks later, one night, my wife comes home with the glove. I said, Mim, what are you doing with the glove? He said, nah, Avram says you could have it tonight. He knows you like to smell it. So how does that happen? That happens because I spent time with him. I could have given him, like I said before, $20 or $30. Go buy a glove, anyone you want. You can buy the most expensive. But that doesn't make the connection. Now he's learning in Eretz Yisrael every single Friday without fail. Or Thursday night he'll call to say good Shabbos, to tell me a word, to tell me where he's going to be Shabbos or whatever. But that comes when you spend time with them. And when you spend time with them and they know that you love them and you really care for them, I'm not going to ask by a raise of hands. How many fathers here know the name of the Masechta that your child is learning? And I'm not going to ask the women. How many women here know the favorite color of their daughter? Or the names of their 3 friends? Besides Goldie, she surely knows. But otherwise, we have to speak to them. We have to look at them as people. And when you spend time and you give them love, then you're going to be able to inspire them. And then one more thing. And that is being a role model. You know, I remember I was in Antwerp, and there's a fellow, Pinchas Kornfeld. Pinchas Kornfeld is one of the most electrifying, charismatic Jews you'd ever want to meet. A Gera Chassid with a Streimel on Shabbos, and he works in the government. He's the he's the Jewish representative to the government in Antwerp. Just a wonderful, wonderful person. And he told me this story. He said in Antwerp, their grade school, even before first grade, kindergarten or pre-1A, whatever it's called, so the little boys and the little girls are together. So the teacher wanted to teach the children how to run a Shabbos table. So on Sunday or Monday, whatever, the first day of school of that week, she said to the little boys, Chaimel, you'll bring in the wine, and Sarla, you'll bring in the challah, and this one will bring in a tablecloth, this one will bring in the silverware, and whatever. Okay, so Wednesday morning, there's a tablecloth set on the table, and all the kids are sitting around the table, and she says, Chaimel, du vazayin the tati, you'll be the father. Oh, he's so proud, he's sitting up front. And she says to him, Fangon, begin. The kid plops back on his chair and he says in Yiddish, and of course I'll translate, he said, Oy, abir gehat a schwere Woche. Oy, did I have a difficult week. Where did he get, you can't even make this up. Where did he get that from? Because every Friday night, that's how his father starts. Oh, yeah, I had such a difficult week. That's how you start Shabbos? The teacher meant that he should start saying Kiddush. That's what the teacher meant. But when a person does certain things, don't think your kids don't know. They know everything. And you have to be a role model. The way you speak on the phone, the way you drive, the way you dress, the way you talk about the Rav, the way you talk about the teachers. When you're a role model, that's what the kids are going to learn from. They're going to do as you do, not as you say. And I'll tell you an amazing thing. He used to be here, Rabbi Schwartz knows Rabbi Winder, right? Wasn't he your classmate? Rabbi Yudel Winder. So Rabbi Yudel Winder, he told me, I mean, he's such a diversified person. He could teach Beis Medrash. Remember, he taught Beis Medrash in Chavetz Chaim in Eretz Yisrael. And here in First Moshe, he's teaching first grade. It's like unbelievable. So he helped start one of the schools in Long Island. So he tells me that one day, there's this kid in his class in the first grade, and the kid he has a tooth that's loose. And he says, don't touch that tooth because it's going to come out and bleed and you're going to cry. So you tell a child not to touch the tooth. What does he do? He touches the tooth. 20 minutes, my mouth's on fire. My mouth's bleeding. Okay, fine. Lunchtime, Rabbi Winder told me he sees another kid is walking around with this kid's tooth. He said, what are you doing with that kid's tooth? Listen to the answer of a first grader. He said, my father gives me $1 for every tooth that came out. His father only gives him 25 cents. So imagine, he was going to make a deal. They made a deal. The first graders, right? He's going to go home and tell his father that his tooth fell out. He didn't think the father was going to say, open your mouth, let me see where the tooth is, right? But he was going to make a $50, right? They were going to switch, right? Where did he get that shtick from?
Wow.
Wow, that's a smart kid, huh? Yiddish a cup. It's amazing, right? But he probably heard his father say these kind of things in the house, right? When they had to use, an insurance form, and he didn't think that his son was listening in the other room, that they're going to claim a higher deductible. And finally, one of the most important things that I think that we have to teach our children is that we're all part of Klal Yisrael. Reb Chaim Volozhiner has a sefer called, not Derech Chaim, what's his, Nefesh HaChaim, right. So Nefesh HaChaim, if you look in the introduction, Rabbi Yitzchak, his son, Rabbi Yitzchak Volozhiner writes the introduction of Nefesh HaChaim. And he writes, my father always used to tell me, he always used to criticize me when I didn't get involved in the problems of other people. And he said, my father used to tell me 3 words. He used to say, Zeh kol adam, this is what a person is. These 3 words. Loi la'atzmoi nivra. You are not created for yourself. Hashem didn't bless you with funds and talents and everything that you have just so that you should be rich and famous. God gave you talents so that you should go out and help other people. God gave you money so that you should go out and help other people. And that's one of the most important things that we can teach our children. We're all part of a big kehillah. We have a past, we have a future, we have a present. We're connected to the people in Eretz Yisrael. We're connected to Yidden all over. Loi la'atzmoi nivra. And when a person makes a child understand that we're part of something greater than ourselves, that's really the way we can give kids a chizuk. And let's show our children that in Shemoneh Esrei, everything that we ask for, do you ever think about this? Everything that we ask for in the middle part, from Atachayin till Shema Koleinu, is Lashon Rabim. V'chonenu, give us wisdom. Shema Koleinu, listen to us. Slach lonu, forgive us. Rifa'enu, heal us. Baruch Aleinu, bless us with parnasa. We're not only davening for ourselves. Lo la'atzmoi nivra. We weren't created for ourselves. So if the Eivishter Hashem benched any of us with any types of funds, we came here tonight to share it, to give out to other people, to give out to those people that we can get the best investment in Klal Yisrael, which is the future of Klal Yisrael. Because if we lose this generation, we're going to lose future generations. And as Yaniv mentioned to me, also one of the great people, not only in Queens, but of Klal Yisrael, he deserves a big round of applause, Yaniv. As Yaniv mentioned to me, and he's so right, when our grandparents came to America, there were tens of thousands of kids that were in public school. So, over the years, the Ashkenazim, obviously, they had Rebbeim, and they got inspired, and they built all the schools. But now we have to do that for the Sfardim, for the Bukharians, and for all those that didn't have the wherewithal. It's not their fault. What should any of them done in Russia? They were there for 70 years without a Torah education. But if we were fortunate, Loi la'atzmoi nivra. So I just want to review quickly that which we spoke, and then we'll end with a beautiful, beautiful story. Let's remember Al Kapayim Yisa'uncha, that we said tonight, and we say tonight in Yeshiva B'Seisa, Al Kapayim, through our hands, we are going to be elevated. The Malachim are going to elevate us because of the mitzvah that we do with our hands, which is tzedakah. There can be no greater thing, as Rav Shlomo Hyman mentioned, when you're teaching this child, you're saving this little boy. It's not only him, but it's his children and his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. And that's what we have to remember by our own children as well. How do we do that? Our walls of our home should be a mechitza. That's the first thing. We have to have happy homes. We have to spend time with our children. We have to make sure that we're a role model. Each and every one of us is a role model. And finally, we have to make sure that they understand we're all part of something great. Loi la'atzmoi nivra. You know, I have to tell you this. I see Goldie Friedman sitting here. I mean, she used to be Goldie Friedman. Today she's freed. But whatever. I remember her father, Shalom, Jack or Yaakov Friedman. Most of you can't know this, but how are you going to know this? But Beis Yaakov used to have 500-600 students. This goes back many years ago. And they couldn't take the budget anymore. And they had to separate. They had to separate the high school. And they made a special high school, and her father, Zechet Tzadik Levracha, became the first president of Sheva High School. How many hundreds, if not thousands by now, of children have gone through that school because this man was ready to step forward. And look what he did. A school in our neighborhood, a great school, for so many, many wonderful children. And that's what happens when you step forward. Jack is already in the Olam HaEmes, but his work stays with us. And the girls that you see on the street, and all the wonderful payrays that have come out of Sheva High School, that's to your father's advantage, because he was ready to step forward. And tonight we have to step forward and to help Rabbi and Mrs. Garber to do their holy work, which they do with all the schools that are available. I just want to end with this story. Many years ago in Detroit, there was a person, his name was Rabbi Dr. Leo Goldman. I had the schus to speak to him numerous times. When I first heard the story, you know that I always try to speak to the person himself to whom it happened. He was 15 years old. He was one of the only children that survived the Vilna ghetto. And after the war, he came back to Vilna, and all the shuls were ransacked. There were no Sifrei Torah. There was no place to daven. They found one shul where some old people would congregate every Shabbos. Then it came Simchas Torah. Now, Simchas Torah, how are you going to dance without a Sefer Torah? And what happened was, he told me that he was standing around with the old men after davening, and all of a sudden a young couple walked in. And Rabbi Goldman told me that there was a 3-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. The 2-year-old girl, her vocal cords were not even developed because these people had been in hiding. They always whispered to the child. And the old men, they said, oh, look at these children. Every child is a Lebedik, a Sefer Torah. Let's pick up these children. We'll dance with these children. And that's how they had hakafas. And when I heard this story, it occurred to me something so special. There's a very famous Zohar HaKodesh that tells us that afilu Sefer Torah shebeheichal, even the Sefer Torah in the Aron Kodesh needs mazel. So if the Sefer Torah needs mazel, what does that mean? You come to a big shul, let's say Young Israel, Kew Garden Hills, right? They got 20 Sefer Torah in the Aron Kodesh. They use one on Shabbos, one on Rosh Chodesh, one Yontif, but 17 out of 20 nobody touches. So those 17 out of 20 Sefer Torah have no mazel. But if a Sefer Torah needs mazel, so a child who's a Lebedik, a Sefer Torah, also needs mazel. So write this down. You'll never forget this. Rab Binyamin Kamenetsky once told me, you know what mazel stands for? Mem Zayin Lamed. Mokoim, Zman, and Loshain. If you're in the right place, Mokoim, at the right time, Zman, and you say the right thing, Loshain, that's mazel. And that's what we have to have with our children. Mokoim, we have to be there for them. Zman, we have to spend quality time with them. And more than anything else, Loshen, we have to be zeicha to say the right words for them. David should help that in the schus that we are going to help tonight, the Garbers. And we're going to help all these wonderful children that are waiting to get Torah, Altaras HaKodesh, that David should help that our children should also go B'derech HaYoshar, make a connection to the past, be prepared for the future. And we should all be proud that we came here on this night to make sure that we're making sure that a future generation will survive. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.